morning, afternoon, or evening, my friends, depending on where you are. Where I am, it's November 16th at 1 p.m. I'm Emily Windsor Craig, and this is History Reset, brought to you each Saturday by People's Internet Radio in Ireland and Radioact TV in Israel to bring valuable information to the public that corporate media refuse to divulge. And yes, you're going to find out today what's the connection between Ireland and Israel. And that's what this story is all about. This program is a public service, but you are welcome to please donate to People's Internet Radio and Radioact TV in Israel to keep the people's truth coming at you without commercial adverts. And today we're going to look at what is a soul and where in the world are we? Where are we? And where are we going? And how did all this, December, a little bit of housekeeping. In the notes below, I have a whole bunch of links and stuff for you to refer to if you want to refer to anything. Okay, so now we'll start. On December the 21st, 2012, the age of Pisces ended and the age of Aquarius began. And that was the end of a galactic year. They call it the precession of the equinoxes. The age of Pisces is the age of evangelism, and the age of Aquarius is the age of peace. And how does it happen? Does it happen force-fed, top-down by an elite, or does it happen grassroots, bottom-up by the people? Well, today we're going to look at the journey of the soul in between these two lines of thought, how this works. And Steve just brought up that he'd like me to explain once again the cosmology, the situation that our world is physically in, and probably the reason why we are not told the real status that our world is in. We are not told the real astronomy. We are not told the real facts about the sun and the moon and the stars and time. And we are not told because we live in a hierarchy ordered galaxy. Okay, let me pull out. The Urantia book talks about the hierarchy ordered galaxy. It's all in here, all 2,069 pages of it. I hope you have good eyes. All right. And so I'll summarize what that book and Voyagers 2 had to say about what happened 600,000 years ago, 25 million years ago, so on. Right. Oh, and in the beginning, all right, in the beginning, before there was any precipitated matter, there were only spirits that just floated around before they started precipitating. A gas is diffused and hot and volatile. A liquid is diffused. Sometimes it's volatile, but it's able to move around. Solids don't move around. They have settled into the solid state. They have precipitated. And so the universe that we see before us now is a precipitation of the solids and liquids that used to be highly energized and highly charged. The energy of the universe as the ecliptic spread out, okay, the energy gradually cooled and things began to precipitate and form and clump, okay, into bigger and bigger pieces. All right. And so there was this big dinner plate. Imagine a great big dinner plate on the center rack of your oven. All right. And imagine that we were on a planet, we spirits who didn't have bodies yet, okay, we began to associate with a planet called Tiamat on the ecliptic, all right, and on an occasion around 600,000 years ago, it was after the Lyran Wars and after the crafting of the El-Anu Treaty, okay, and that's salient here too. Nibiru, as it was coming in for its orbit, got in between the wrong two planets, Mars and Jupiter. Instead of Mars and Jupiter, it came in too close, and there was a three-way collision. Okay, so that was on the ecliptic. What was Tiamat was smacked down on the floor of the oven, smacked down on the floor, way below the ecliptic now, where there's a sheet of ice and water. All right, and what was left of Tiamat was the toroidal battery that kept the planet warm with its volcanic and water moving mechanism on the inside, and the pole, the Schumann resonance pole magnetic engine that spun a canopy over its head. It's a terrarium, but we're not told this. Okay, so that's our status. We live in a terrarium. Isn't that great? All right, but we are at the tail end of an old universe. And you know, there's a big bang every once in a while, and the big bang goes poof, and it goes out, and then it collapses. The ecliptic collapses. Well, guess what? We're not in the way of the ecliptic collapsing. When the ecliptic collapses, we're down on the floor, and it's going to bypass us. We're going to be okay when the universe collapses before its next big bang. This creates a social crisis because many of the sentient races who know how to travel around up there on the ecliptic realize that they are in danger, and they're scouting our world down here on this piece of ice with water. They're scouting us to see if they can settle down here. And that's the reason for the dome, to keep us safe from all those intrusions, okay? Because the planetary sovereign, who is named in the Urantia book as Yahweh, in the Oahspe as Jehovah, in the Bible as Jehovah, okay? Are we? Okay. Planetary sovereign that recycled what was left of Tiamat in Genesis 1:1, when it was formless and dark, and there was no light, and everything was just dead. Okay. Yahweh recycled what was left of Tiamat and made it habitable again, and that's where we are. We don't live on Earth. Earth was a crystal that shattered, according to Voyagers 2. All right. So we have been here as long as we've been here. And what are we? The question becomes. Well, down below, I have a picture of the conception of a soul. And when a soul is conceived, it lets out a little light. Okay? And it's that light that activates and actuates the human body at the level of the heart. Okay, that's when we're alive, is when the soul is operating this vehicle we call a body. All right, so now we got that straight. All right, so what is the soul doing here? Let me pull out some stuff here. First of all, the editor's preface to the Oahspe. The Oahspe is a tome, 900 and some odd pages, that was inspired in the 1880s, 1882. When a man holds up a book and says, you must believe this because it says so, or thus saith the Lord, should we not pity that man? Does he comprehend the liberty of a person to acquire knowledge? Any book that imparts knowledge of the life and destiny of man is a good book. Any book that unfolds the character and person of Jehovah and the wonder and glory of his creation is a good book. When a book gives us information of things we know not of, it should also give us a method of proving that information to be true. This book covers that ground. The day has arrived when men will not accept proclamation and assertions. He wants plausible reasons or substantial proofs that the authority be not merely a pretense, but a demonstrable fact. The time of man worship is at an end. Readers no longer accept a book as good and great merely because any certain one wrote it. The book must have merits of its own, otherwise it will soon pass out of existence. This is my whole point. All right. The Hebrew scriptures we have are wonderful. They're useful. They focus on the summary of the plot of what has happened to this world. But everything isn't in them. Everything isn't in them. Now, there are a couple of points that are covered in the OWASP that are not covered anywhere else. And one has to do with the souls that fetal on. They fetal on to a conceived infant, or they fetal on to a walking around human. We call them a walk-in. Okay, they're the souls that fetal on. But it shall come to pass that mothers perish in the waters with children in the womb, which live by fetal as is proper in my sight. Therefore, to all such fetals give special care, for they are without sin. And when the mother is dead corporeally, and the fetal also, bring hence their spirits but together, and provide a volunteer angel of fetal power, and deliver the infant spirit to her to be nurtured until the proper time of weaning, and provide in the same place a home for the mother of the child, that she may inherit its love and mirth. All right, so that the souls of the infants that are being aborted are not lost. Those souls continue to exist. And there are angelic corps that are charged with salvaging them. All right. And then about fetals. Where is this about fetals? All right. So fetaling on was the first point that I got out of the OWASP. The second one was a wonderful line I'll never forget. The wonderful thing about the atheist people is they keep the religions honest. I thought that was a good one. All right, so the soul is what we are. And some of us are simple souls, and some of us are compound souls. And compound souls are much more complex, obviously. All right. And compound souls drive their families crazy. All right. Well, you understand that. So then there is the matter of, well, what is the final destiny of a soul? What are we coming to do here? And in the Urantia book, it talks about the outcome called fusion, when the achieved by mind with fragment of spirit of either Father, Son, or Spirit, that other books call ascension. So ascension and fusion and rapture are all the same process to take the value of a material life, a material being, a soul that has achieved something or other, and fuse that soul with a body that can be eternal. That's the hope that is expressed as redemption, salvation, ascension, okay? That when we leave here, we become we're not just good, but we're good for something. We're good for something. Yeah, I charge you to read this. It's the background of our galaxy and how it operates. And can you be devoted to God and not know how things operate? In the Urantia book, God's given name is Yahweh, which is the way he prefers to hear it. All right. And he is still the planetary sovereign. He got reelected, I guess. Okay. So then we have to face the problem of the cultural split that occurred on the world when Enki and Enlil, the Anunnaki, set up their gold mining operations. Enlil was in Syria and Enki was in South Africa, and they were mining gold in South Africa and South America as well. Nagashita set up the gold mining operations in South America, and he's the one who had the gold tablets that Joseph Smith found and used to found the Mormon church. Okay, it all works. All right. So we have our history in archaeology, which is not the same as what is in the textbooks. All right. We have fossils and indications of the Nephilim, that they were up to 36 feet tall. And we find their skeletons all over the world. All right. We find pieces of technology, stone technology, and metal technology that our archaeologists cannot date or put a finger on all over the world. Particularly if you go to New Earth channel on YouTube and you look at her videos about Siberia. Siberia has airports where there are no cities. They have dams and bridges where there's no rivers, all right? Siberia used to be totally inhabited. Okay, no longer is. And then we have, pieces of technology, the antithyra mechanism and so on. We have pieces of technology that we cannot identify that, when tested, turn out to be hundreds of millions of years old. We have cities underwater. Okay. And there's about 15 cities underwater. We have UFOs that have been dug out of the ground and back engineered. We have a history of the Anunnaki coming here, and we have evidence of their ships and their undersea bases. All right. And we have our moon. Okay, we have our moon, which is described in text by NASA one way, and when you take photographs of it and bring black light and infrared into the picture, you get a completely different set of facts. All right. So the Anunnaki had two lines of thought. One was Enki and the other was Enlil. Enki taught the spiritual traditions of the fifth dimension. And the link to that, which is holyconservancy.org/2829.htm. Okay, that's a page that lays out fifth dimensional theology versus third dimensional theology. And you see why it is that the New Age and occult and Satanist and Luciferian um, theologians, if you want to call it, because they all know that we come from progenitors who are high beings of light. They all know that there was no such thing as evolution. That was just, that's part of the dogma that is taught to the people, so that the people think of themselves as being in a, I don't know. I don't know what the scientists who teach evolution think that the people are supposed to think about being insignificant and part of an enormous universe in which there are billions of this and trillions of that, and we're insignificant little beings running around. Now, it's true we're tiny. It's true we're tiny, all right? Because if you look at the pictures of the Nephilim and the Agarthians and the Anunnaki and the Bigfoot, the races we know of, okay, those are the races we know of. They are all 9 to 15 feet tall. And so we who are under 6 feet tall are like the story of Gulliver's Travels, the Lilliputians, okay? We're little itty bitty bitty bitty. We're miniature people to the spirits in the universe. We're miniatures. I don't know if we're small as crickets, but we're small. All right. So the 2 points of view, the Enki teaching metaphysics of the 5th dimension, and Enlil teaching and developing legal systems and law around behavior. These 2 systems have been at each other now for centuries. And each soul will, now the Enki system leads to the process of ascension as one sort, and the Enlil leads to salvation under the covenant of another sort. So I can't be specific about how the outcomes work out. They are different. But what makes the difference between living on and not living on is the results and effects and behaviors of the soul while they're here. We all know that we are judged according to what we do, what we create while we're here. It's not just simple actions of behavior. It's what we are accountable for being responsible for while we're here. Now, we have the disability at work of the treaties that the galaxy forged before we existed. The treaty that the galaxy forged after the Lyran War 600,000 years ago was called the El-Anu Treaty, and all current contemporary treaties align with the values of the El-Anu. Let's go through the El-Anu. All right. There was a treaty El-Anu arrived at, an agreement between some of the fallen and Anu Elohim races and the Emerald Covenant races, the Christos founders races, that an attempt for a third seeding on this planet would not be stopped. Warring stopped, but in return for ceasing the conflict, the Anunnaki, who immigrated here by way of their wormwood system into the solar system that we used to be associated with, that we haven't been associated with since we dropped down to the bottom. Okay. All right. Were required to do their bioregenesis outside of the Emerald Covenant. The stipulations in which were that no racial or physical bioregenesis development was to be permitted, that races were and are sacrosanct with superior races and inferior races, with ideological purity and a hierarchical and bureaucratic system of influence that guaranteed top-down rulership. This doesn't change. This doesn't change from dispensation to dispensation. The El-Anu Agreement was precedent for today's practice by Alpha Draconians, Orions, and Greys of abducting and utilizing humans and their genomes for their own DNA repair. That agreement has never been rescinded, despite outcomes of suffering and woe that humans experience from it. Great. The rationale for gods to exterminate evolved souls is that they are troublemakers. Therefore, the balance of population will conform and experience peace. But the outcome is terror and tyranny. No one dares quibble nor question. In the founders' model, whole populations were taken out whose belief systems were harmless. All right. And that is what Christopher Columbus was doing and Cortez was doing. You know, that's what the explorers were doing. We're taking out whole races of primitive peoples in order to, quote, evolve the thinking of their souls into a higher level. See where that goes? All right. And so the beliefs about one race being superior to another race because the higher race is intellectually head tripping ahead of the other people is still intact. The belief that whole cultures need to be eradicated and culled so they can be replaced with newer cultures is still going on. You know, it's called proxy wars in the Mideast. All right, they're still doing it. That's what the neocons do. Now, if we're not part of the eradication of people, if we're not culling and killing, okay, who are we and what are we doing? What is our path? What is our path? Now, first of all, primarily we have the Bible, and the Bible's good. The Bible's good. I've got this great big heavy one because it's got large print.
Emily?
Yeah.
There's a question, chat for you.
Okay, can you read it to me? Because I've got too much on my plate.
Being part of the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha bloodline, can you shed any light on the alleged pedophilia?
Yes. Yes.
Prevalent
I'll go there.
In these high bloodlines, is this practice connected to the satanic cult?
Yes.
Is this detached soul of infants?
Yes, I can go there. I'll go there. But I'm going to have to pull it in where it belongs. Okay, and it belongs a little bit right here. This is a little bit right here. Now, we have a history in the Bible of a group of people headed by 12 tribes and a royal bloodline, the Judean bloodline. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Joseph, and Okay. And that group of people received a version of law, not unlike the laws of Hammurabi, because where they lived, the Canaanites around them followed the Anunnaki, Sumerian, Babylonian culture of sacrificing unwanted babies, unwanted children, unwanted elders, and people who dared to tell the truth. Okay, that's what they did for the god of Baal and the god of Moloch. And so Enlil, the name Enlil is Yahweh spelled backwards anyway, in Sumerian. But anyway, Yahweh through Enlil, the character Enlil, gave Moses and Aaron the complete holy law. And holy law is at holyconservancy.org/2728.htm. There's holy law for you. And holy law is always about behavior. It's the actions that people take that cause outcomes to occur. It's all behavior. It's a culture, all right? And we have many examples of similar cultures in our world. All right? We have the Catechism of the Mormon Church, which lays out their lifestyle. The Catechism of the Catholic Church that lays out their lifestyle. The Adventist Home by Ellen White that lays out their lifestyle. Ascension, the Essene ethic found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was a direct derivative of the Hebrew culture and the Mosaic law. Okay. We have Zhuang Falun, which is the Chinese version, the Chinese inspired version of the lifestyle. And we have the Course in Miracles, which is the psychological version of the meditations. We have the Benedictines and the Dominicans and the Marists, okay, that are following the same kind of meditative, connecting with the cosmos in prayer and meditation to direct the life of the soul. And they do that according to Acts chapter 2 and Acts chapter 3. Here we go. Fear began to fall upon every soul, and many portents and signs began to occur through the apostles. All those who became believers were together and having all things in common. They went selling their possessions and properties and distributing the proceeds to all, just as anyone would have the need. Every one of these groups does that. There are other groups that do that. The Amish and the Mennonites and the Hutterites and the Old Order Quakers and the 12 tribes, they do that too. So there are communities. The kibbutzim in Israel do the same thing. They are belonging to the same culture of prayer, talking to God, meditation, listening to God, and sharing. Okay. But the problem has been that the devotional communities exist in a larger context of Enki's teachings of the occult, what we call New Age, the connection to Anunnaki beliefs that you sacrifice the people you don't want in the community. You kill them, which is the same thing that Islam teaches, which is the same thing that, any spiritual group that teaches we are the favorite. We are the ones who are perfect. We are the ones who are going to inherit everything, and we're just going to get rid of the people who aren't doing it right. Okay, they're into being righter. They're into being righter than other people, and they prosecute that out of the belief that they have the right to call evil. They have the right to call evil. You see, this is not simple. This is not simple. Now, in my video yesterday, I pointed out about the New Age movement and its adherence to the Anunnaki cosmology, in which silence is golden, your communications are according to chain of command, and no complaints are allowed. If you are, or a friend of yours is in the Masonic order, that's what they have to do. They're not allowed to protest or to object or to petition for a change in the Masonic cosmology. The Jesuits are not allowed to protest the policies of the Jesuits. You know, it was the Jesuits who cobbled together the Islamic faith so that the Catholic Church would have martyrs and saints for worship. Okay, it's the old problem, reaction, solution. The church didn't have enough money because the people were not able to tithe, because they had to tithe to the empire, whether it was the Roman Empire, the Tartarian Empire, or the British Empire. They had to tithe to the, so they couldn't tithe to the church. And so the church had to create a mechanism for being needed so it would get funds. The church had to create a protection racket to keep itself going, to keep the cash register ringing. All right. And you know, there's a saying, you keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. All right. So the Jesuit order created Islam and assisted Muhammad, you know, got him going. And they created an ethic, an ideology that is essentially identical to the empire that they claim they are opposing. All right. The empire is full of mercenary and double dealing, which is taqiyya in the Islamic idiom. It's full of jizya, which is protection rackets, and it's full of jihad, which is domination over other people. In the New World Order today, all right, the countries that are pushing for the New World Order, there's Belgium and there's China, and of course there's Islam. They all have sex trafficking that is winked at. Okay, it's allowed. Prostitution is allowed. Pederasty is allowed. Child sex trafficking is allowed. But now in the West, now that the Western leaders since Eisenhower have signed treaties with ETs, the Greada Treaty, the Tau and the Tau 9, they aligned with the El Anu Treaty that says you've got to cull inferiors. And that's why the intelligentsia, the elites, are calling for population reduction. That's why they're calling for smaller families. That's why they're calling for Agenda 21 to force the families who are left into cities. That's the domination paradigm that has enabled child sex trafficking to become a worldwide, not only a worldwide business, but it's a galaxy-wide business. Abductions, okay, is human trafficking. Abductions is human trafficking, and they're not just abducting humans walking around. They also negotiate, you know, it's soul trafficking, body parts. ET UFOs have crashed in which there were tanks of human body parts on board for sale. Okay. And that's part of the Baal and Molech ethic that says some humans are worth something and some humans are just chattel cattle. And this is the problem we have with law, that common law says all humans have value, but maritime admiralty, corporate statutes entirely leaves out any rights whatsoever, rights to speech, rights to assembly, rights to freedom from search. Commercial law has none of that. All right, the commercial law follows the New World Order and the EU and the UN and the followers of the occult and the followers of Baal and Moloch. Okay. You see, it's all tangled up. It's all tangled up. And the British monarchy, the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, got mixed up in the occult with the Masonic order and the fifth density, fifth dimensional ontology about 10 years after Albert died. When Prince Albert died, Victoria's husband, she went deep into mourning and went into the occult in order to be able to contact Albert in the occult. 10 years later, the Masonic order was ready to stage 3 world wars through Albert Pike, the Grand Commander of the Masons, wrote to a Dr. Massini his plans for staging 3 world wars. Now, King George V, who was Queen Victoria's grandson, sat at her knee while she waxed about how she wanted to have a worldwide empire, all right? And so that was his dream and his hope when he took over in 1911. He was going to help Grandma Victoria spread her worldwide empire, which is the world order. So he adopted the Masonic 3 world wars. He adopted secrecy. He threw out his Christian ethic completely. But his son, Edward VIII, okay, was brought up by tutors who were Christian and who taught Edward to live the Christian life, so that Edward couldn't stand what was going on while he was growing up and watching his father consolidate the banks, change the name to Windsor to hide the fact that Saxe-Coburg-Gotha was related to the other monarchies, okay, set up Tavistock, the Puzzle Palace, got behind the Kalergi plan and the Cloward-Piven plan to bankrupt nations so that one world empire could take over according to the same ethic of Baal and Moloch and Satan and Lucifer, whose objection to the covenants of Yahweh was that they felt they were being too rigid. They wanted freedom to do whatever they wanted. And in that desire for freedom, we now have a world in chaos, because the sex book, the textbooks that our children get in school teach that older generations are not reliable, that they only made mistakes, and that you only connect with the whole world and your peer group. And so the younger generation has no desire to listen or investigate the history that has been brought down to us. Now, the question for the individual soul is, how do I handle being in the middle of this dogfight between the empire with its human trafficking and pedophilia and profligate sex and sexualizing children and drug running and gun running and all these vices and crime, versus joining a devotional community where I have no freedom of thought, I have no freedom of movement, I'm stuck in this little situation and can't get out of it. You know, it's between a rock and a hard place. Okay? How do we negotiate the status of our soul in this environment of divide and conquer, where every ideology has its opposite and they're ching, 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 back and forth, you know? The spinning ballers are going at it with the flat earthers, and the red pillars are going at it with the blue pillars, and the conservatives against the progressives, and the Catholics against the Protestants, and the, you know, and it goes on and on? How do we find a way through it? That has been my goal. All right. And so let's take a look at the difference between love and hate, because that's the difference between culling innocent people versus taking care of your neighbor. Here's Isaiah chapter 58. Call out full-throated, do not hold back. Raise your voice just like a horn and tell my people their revolt and the house of Jacob their sins. Yet day after day, it was I whom they kept seeking, and it was in the knowledge of my ways that they would express delight. Like a nation that carried on righteousness itself, and that had not left the very justice of their God, in that they kept asking me for righteous judgments, drawing near to God, in whom they had delight. For what reason did we fast, and you did not see? And did we afflict our soul, and you took no note? Indeed, you people were finding delight in the very day of your fasting, when there were all your toilers that you kept driving to work. Indeed, for quarreling and struggle you would fast, and for striking with the fist of wickedness. Did you not keep fasting as in the day for making your voice to be heard in the height? Should the fast that I choose become like this, as a day for earthling man to afflict his soul, for bowing down his head just like a rush, and that he should spread out mere sackcloth and ashes as his couch? Is this that you call a fast and a day acceptable to God? Is not this the fast that I choose, to loosen the fetters of wickedness, to release the hands of the yoke bar, and to send away the crushed ones free? And that you people should tear in two every yoke bar? Is it not the dividing of your bread out to the hungry one? And that you should bring the afflicted, homeless people into your house? That in case you should see someone naked, you must cover him? And that you should not hide yourself from your own flesh? In that case, your light would break forth just like the dawn, and speedily would recuperation spring up for you, and before you your righteousness would certainly walk. The very glory of God would be your rear guard, and in that case you would call, and Yahweh himself would answer. You would cry for help, and he would say, here I am. Now that's love, giving to those who don't deserve it. What is hate is killing those who don't deserve it. So our path as a soul is to find out how, in wherever we are, whether we're in Jerusalem or Dublin or Paradise in California, where is our personal path to showing mercy? Now, compassion is a word that gets kicked around a lot, but what I've found is what it means is to leave people alone, to let go and let God, live and let live. In our time, compassion is taking the side of the avoiders. And taking the side of the avoiders is probably not a good idea. Okay, because this is a time of judgment. You got something for me, Steve?
What do you mean by the avoiders?
Avoiders are people who turn their head the other way rather than look at a problem. They're following the fifth density problem-solving method. Here, let me review that with you.
Yeah, so say what you said again, though. Say your phrase again.
Okay. We have to choose between getting involved and avoiding getting involved. And avoiding getting involved is the very doctrine and dogma of the Anunnaki fifth dimensional theology because they live in eternity. They do not live in time. They do not age. All 12 of their DNA strands are connected. Theirs haven't been cut and snipped. They are not limited to 70 years as we are. Okay. And so time is not a big deal to them because they live over it. You know, fourth dimension is time. They're in the fifth dimension. Time doesn't bother them that much. And so here, let me read to you the actual working out of the Enki, Anunnaki, New Age, occult philosophy. And here is the way you will hear it if you read one of their books or magazines. In the light where space is light, but planets appear dark, the expression in the light refers to space where bodies appear dark and heavenly reality operates outside of time. Thoughts exist in an eternal now. Anunnaki and Nibiru subjective dogma is prior to material and physical principle because wisdom pre-programs reality at the atomic level. They are assuming that the atomic level of reality is what will accrue and create justice because they live outside of time. They don't see the operations of cause and effect. They also depend on astrology as their clock. That's the only clock they have, which is a very long-term clock, 26,000 years for a single year. Okay. All right. Dark matter, and they live in dark matter. They have their dark matter sun, which is Wormwood or Nemesis, operates at a high level of frequency that we call black light, or ultraviolet, which burns the skin very easily. So Nemesis is the black light sun that enlivens dark matter in this sector of the galaxy, and it must remain intact. And so there is a serious fear that the physical militaries will attack Nemesis. Why? Just because they can. Civil justice at that level, at fifth dimension, is defined in subjective terms as aligning with appropriate thought groups. Okay, they instead, we have factions, they have thought groups, and the Urantia book supports the thought groups. Beliefs, policies, procedures, doctrines, dogma, methods have nothing to do with events in time. It is deemed unnecessary to know causes and effects. Only holy and sacred abstractions and intentions inherent in matter. They are totally unconcerned with behavior. How hierarchy operates, and this is also substantiated in the Urantia book. Creation is all one. Have you heard that before? As above, so below. So the lower levels must align in their points of view, doctrines, and manifest love. They have believed until lately that humankind was going to have to align with their way of doing, their method of doing things. And they're finding out that it doesn't work. Okay? For them, experience is mental. A heart receives no input from a physical will where they live. All right? As thoughts go now, like attracts like naturally, without law. Therefore, every good thought attracts good. But a disruptive, changeable thought must be sublimated and forbidden access, you see. Now, here in material, electronic world, economic world, there's no such thing as like attracts like. You put two like poles of a magnet together and they repel, all right? However, wherever there's money, there are predators. Opposites attract. In electronics, opposites attract. So in the physical, it's opposite from the way it is in the subjective. And that's why they operate in black light and we operate on the other side of the coin in white light. All right. Silence is golden. One must only speak when spoken to from above. Bad reports are resented. Gossip is forbidden. They sacrifice whistleblowers and troubleshooters, okay, because they don't want their society, their thought group, to be destabilized. There is no personal truth that cannot manifest in eternity. Thus, reality is an illusion, and the soul is responsible for his or her own inner harmony. We're only responsible for yourself when you live at the fifth dimension and higher. But down here, where we're affecting each other, we have other responsibilities. Peace and harmony occur according to the astrological model, following patterns in the galactic precession of the equinoxes and its 26,000-year period. So there are no differences of opinion showing up, only the unified thoughts of all souls who are in alignment. Communication is by chain of command up there. Seek, try, promise, vow, agree, contract. All temporal arrangements have no value because every good thought can manifest of its own energies. And that's why the ETs didn't bother to adhere to the Agriata Treaty or the Tau 9, because treaties don't have much meaning to them. The treaties are in time, they're in eternity. See? Elites among the ETs define what is good, and only they know what's true. Now, I had a little conversation with George Herbert Walker Bush back in 2001 to 2004 at New York Times The Abuzz Forum. And he and I used to discuss this. He used to say things to me like, well, you don't need to bother about any of these issues because you're just going to live your life, little lady, and you'll just be happy with your children, and you don't have to think about any of this, okay? The elites honestly believe that the people who work and who adopt the behavioral model of doing good to get a good outcome, they believe that we are stupid or ignorant or foolish to even try to solve problems. Wrong and disharmonious thoughts get nipped in the bud with social sanctions before they can manifest bad outcomes. And disrupting thought is a crime against manifest harmony in the fifth dimension. Thought controls are absolute in the fifth dimension. Can you see how that mindset has infected the leadership layer of the Masons, the chivalric orders, the monarchies, the corporation heads, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergers, the bankers? You see how that mindset of we don't want the little people to worry about these big issues because we're just going to take care of things. You see how that has degraded life on this world for the people who do the work. Under Emerald Covenant titles, people can be called and sacrificed en masse as a form of eugenics or hierarchy command if those people convey wrong cultural beliefs, although they're innocent of physical crimes of harm or deceit. You see what I'm saying? That's the philosophy of the Satanists and the Luciferians and the Masons and the Rosicrucians and the chivalric orders and the corporations that have taken over control and intend to do whatever they want. Whatever, like Bill Gates is going to, he's the one who paid for Common Core.
Sam,
Yeah.
are you ready for a break now?
Gosh, how did that happen? Okay, all right, okay. All right, I'm ready for a break now. yeah, let's take a break and put some music on so I can hear it too. All right. Oh, I know how to do that. I'll just turn on I'll just turn it on at the chat room.
Okay.
Okay, let's have some music for a little while.
All right. Okay, you're off.
All right. Well, except that I'm not off at Facebook. I'm still on at Facebook.
You're gonna do more on Facebook?
Well, I don't know. Let's see. Do I have anybody wanting to ask me a question? Bum, 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 bum. Do I have any questions here? Oops. Do I have any questions here?
This way. We'll get to them.
During the break. There we go.
Do you need to run to the restroom?
No, nothing like that. No, this is just too complex to be able to do it in 20 minutes or half hour or 1 hour. All right. There are a few people here, but mostly they're just saying hello. Prince Philip giving his explanation to being friends with Epstein. Oh dear. No, I don't have any questions here. So, all right. I don't have any questions here, so I'm going to ring off. And if you guys want to hear some more, you go here to People's Internet Radio, and you can hear some more. All right.